thing about her is acts of service. Her whole love language is acts of service. Believe what I was hearing. It's blunt and it kicks any adult in their stomach when they hear him say it.
Now I see why. You're a selfish monster. I hope that every day you think about what you did.
She had just moved into a quiet house on a quiet street. A fresh start. A safe place for her 5 kids to grow up. That's the version of Sharmaine Forpahl her family once remembered. Not the one from the police report. Not the one where she's found just outside her own front door. Her youngest was 7. Old enough to see everything, too young to understand any of it. This isn't a story about a stranger in the dark. It's about a man she knew, an argument that turned fatal, and 5 children who will spend the rest of their lives without their mother because of one night neither of them can take back. Sharmaine was 32, a single mom raising 5 kids on her own, which is its own kind of full-time job, and by every account she was good at it. She'd just settled into a new place in Cleveland's old Brooklyn neighborhood, the kind of quiet residential block where nothing is supposed to happen. Friends describe her as devoted, present. The type of mother who built her whole life around her children instead of around herself. The man in her orbit was Charles Barkley, 44 at the time. Not a stranger, not a random encounter. The two of them had been involved, though only briefly. What that relationship actually looked like day to day isn't something that's been laid out publicly. No timeline of how they met, no clear record of what pulled them together or what was already pulling them apart. What is clear is that Barkley wasn't a man without a past. His record stretched back almost 30 years. Drug trafficking, robbery, kidnapping. He'd already served time more than once. And when he crossed paths with Sharmaine, he was doing it on parole, which means the state had already decided, in writing, that his freedom came with conditions. That's the part worth sitting with. Somewhere in a system built to catch guys like this before they hurt someone again, the paperwork existed, the oversight existed, and it didn't stop what came next. What set off the final argument between them isn't part of the public record. No 911 call revealing the trigger, no witness account of how the night started. What we know is where it ended up, and how fast a private argument became something 5 children couldn't unsee. Thursday night, July 10th, just after 10 o'clock. On West 57th Street, minutes from where Sharmaine lived, a call came into Cleveland Police Dispatch. Domestic violence in progress. That's the phrase on record. Not stabbing, not attack. Domestic violence. The kind of call police answer every single night. One of hundreds, nothing that suggested what officers were about to walk into. When they arrived, they found Sharmaine outside her own home. Not inside, not somewhere private. Right there, steps from her front door with multiple stab wounds. And around her, 5 children, 7 to 15 years old, not somewhere else in the house, not shielded from it. There. Barkley was already gone. Here's the part that's hard to sit with. Minutes before it happened, Sharmaine had been on the phone with her best friend, Kiara Drake. An ordinary call, nothing that hinted at what was coming. Drake would later say she didn't believe it when she heard the news. She'd just heard Sharmaine's voice. She'd just heard her son in the background. And then it was over. By the time paramedics arrived, there was nothing left to do but confirm what the scene already made clear. The Cuyahoga County medical examiner would later formally identify her, Sharmaine Magan Forpahl, 32 years old. Barkley didn't stick around to explain himself. He ran, which, on its own, tells you plenty. Innocent men don't usually sprint away from crime scenes and go quiet for the next 12 hours. Guilty men do, right up until the police catch up with them anyway, which is exactly what happened here. It took investigators less than a day. By the following afternoon, Charles F. Barkley was in custody, booked into the Cuyahoga County Jail, and charged with murder. Whatever head start he thought running would buy him, it bought him almost nothing. One night of freedom, and then a jail cell that, as it would turn out later, he was never leaving again. News of the arrest reached Sharmaine's family fast, and so did the weight of what actually happened. Her sister, Sky Harmon, spoke to reporters in the days after, describing a house suddenly missing its center. She talked about Sharmaine's youngest son, just 7, who didn't fully understand yet that his mother wasn't coming back. Harmon herself kept scrolling through old text threads, unable to bring herself to delete a conversation she knew would never get a reply. A GoFundMe went up soon after, started by Kira Drake on behalf of the kids. It didn't dress anything up. It just said what was true, that Sharmaine had finally found a peaceful home for her children, and that peace had lasted only a matter of weeks. On August 5th, a Cuyahoga County grand jury handed down the indictment. 2 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, 1 count of domestic violence, 6 charges, 1 night, and a criminal history stretching back to 1996 that made it clear this wasn't the first time Charles Barkley had shown a courtroom exactly who he was. The next time he'd stand in front of a judge, it wouldn't be for an indictment. It would be for a verdict. 11 months. That's how long it took to get from indictment to trial. 11 months of a family waiting, 5 kids growing up faster than they should have had to, and Charles Barkley sitting in a cell insisting, presumably to anyone who'd listen, that none of this was his fault. The trial opened June 10th, 2026, in the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. A jury was seated, opening statements followed, and over the next week, prosecutors laid out what they had: a scene, a body, 5 eyewitnesses who happened to be children, and a defendant with 30 years of proof that violence wasn't new territory for him. The defense's strategy, whatever it was, didn't hold. On June 17th, the jury came back: guilty, aggravated murder, murder, felonious assault. 3 separate convictions, and not one of them left room for interpretation. Sentencing came 6 weeks later, July 30th. Judge Kevin Kelly didn't leave much ambiguity there either. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ever. Prosecutor Michael O'Malley put it plainly outside the courtroom: 30 years of being a violent career criminal, and this time, he said, the judge made sure the public wouldn't have to deal with him again. But the moment that actually mattered happened before the sentence was read, when Sharmaine's family stood up and looked at the man who killed her. One of her children spoke first, simple words, no theatrics needed, that she was the most important person in their life, and that not being able to hug her, not being able to call her, had been the hardest part of all of it. Then Sharmaine's father addressed Barkley directly. He asked him if he understood what it was like to watch his grandchildren grieve a mother they'd never stop missing. Barkley said nothing back. Not to them. When it was finally his turn to speak, he didn't apologize. He didn't explain himself. He told the court he maintained his innocence, that he respectfully disagreed with the jury, and that he didn't believe he'd gotten a fair trial. Respectfully disagreed, after 12 strangers reviewed the evidence and reached a unanimous verdict, and after decades of his own record spoke louder than anything his lawyer could argue. It's a bold thing to stand in a courtroom and claim the system failed you when the system has been remarkably consistent about you for 30 straight years. A family representative summed up what the sentence actually meant to them: not vengeance, just certainty. That he would never walk free again, and that the children could finally start to heal without wondering if he'd ever be back in their lives. Sharmaine's 5 kids are now being raised by different relatives, spread across a family that's had to reorganize itself around a loss none of them saw coming. They lost their mother in the one place that was supposed to be safest, steps from her own front door, in a neighborhood she'd chosen because it felt peaceful. Charles Barkley will spend the rest of his life in a cell, still saying he didn't do it. Nobody in that courtroom believed him. 12 jurors didn't believe him. And it's hard to imagine anyone ever will again. What's left is the part that doesn't get resolved by a verdict: 5 children figuring out how to grow up without her, and a family holding on to every memory they can, because that's the only thing he didn't manage to take from them. Fair use notice. This video is for educational and commentary purposes only. All footage and images used fall under fair use guidelines as protected under Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act. If you enjoy true crime content, make sure to subscribe to Love to Death channel for more shocking cases, in-depth investigations, and updates on stories like this one. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.